Okay, let's get started. Let's get chatting. I'm delighted to be here just outside Kilcock in Warrenstown Lodge Stud with Ronan. Maybe you'll introduce yourself, Ronan, and where we are and what I suppose you do here in the stud.
Hi, I'm Ronan Kinsella, and we run a mixed sport horse yard. We've got event horses, show jumpers, and dressage horses, and we will be running horses on all national competitions and internationally in all three phases. So we've had a busy year this year, and we're here to discuss Christopher Robin here, who's been a 4-star event horse, and he has competed across Europe and the UK and Ireland very successfully. And in his career, he has dealt with many issues, and we've found Precision Microbes to be the most effective product that we've used on him over the last number of years.
So let's take it back. We had a chat, and I knew that I was having a conversation with someone with a little more detail than I normally was having, and a huge interest in the topic of gut microbes, the immune system. So our very first conversation was, you were chatting to JP in the office about Precision Microbes. And you know, it was sort of early days. You'd seen some benefits, but I was really fascinated by Christopher Robin's story because of his blood work and his history. So can we, just your own background, why have you such an interest in this area? I think one of the things I've noticed from chatting to you and being here this morning is attention to detail is paramount in this yard, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that for me, when you're looking at the horses, you want to make sure that every horse is able to do the best that it can and to perform to the top of its ability. And if they're not feeling 100% in themselves, then they're not going to do that. When I was in college, I went to UCD and was lucky enough to do nutrition and food science. And that sort of thing has always been an interest to me. And this horse brought it home, really, because over the years with him, we have found that he had a few issues going on, nothing that was very visible initially, but we knew he wasn't 100% in himself. And that culminated, we thought that he was having difficulty at the change of seasons in the autumn. That's when we always found that we'd have a drop in performance and a drop in his condition. And we had initially thought that it was to do with the changeover from new hay to old hay to new hay and changes in the grass and stuff outside. Since then, however, we've found out through bitter experience that he actually has irritable bowel syndrome and that he suffers with his gut massively. And any changes in sugar levels and food levels affect him massively.
And he's a very sensitive horse. Even when we pulled out the camera, the stand there, of all the horses here, he was making some noise, and that level of stress obviously has an impact on his gut. So that sensitivity was there.
Yes, he's always been somewhat like a stallion.
Yeah.
And I think he was probably cut quite late.
Okay.
And definitely as horses go, he takes everything to heart. He's very, very attached to the people he works with, similar to stallions, and he doesn't love changes. He doesn't love changes.
None of us like changes, that's okay. So take us back to his incident and kind of the history. What was interesting for me is we have a couple of barometers we can use here, which is his blood work.
Yes.
Which is very interesting for me. And do you want to just talk about maybe his clinical case, because you've taken a particular interest working with different vets on this as well, on his clinical case and blood work and his history over time.
All the horses here that are competing at the high level are blood tested regularly.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, from the owner's point of view, the entries are very expensive, and there's no point finding out at the show or the week before the show that you've got an issue on the bloods. Your bloods are a little bit lower, a little bit off. So we try to look at it being sort of 3 weeks to 2 to 3 weeks in advance of any show that they're blood tested and that they're done regularly, so that the vets have a good blood picture to know what's normal for the horse. Because not every horse runs within the absolute normal bands. So if you can look at the horses if you can look at it from that perspective over a period of time, then you'll pick up changes, and then you're able to help the horse. You have time to get stuff done to get the blood right for the competition that you're aiming for. So as a result of that, this horse, because he's done a lot of internationals, this horse had a very good blood picture going back over a large number of years, 6-7 years. And when he initially got diagnosed, we were looking at that, and we thought that it was it was because we had run badly at a competition, and afterwards we had tested positive for a bacteria called Lawsonia, and we thought that he'd picked it up at the competition. He had a lot of diarrhea and stuff at the time, And when we investigated it, we found the UCD found that there was a problem in the gut, in the small intestine. We had an inflamed small intestine, and that was where our problems were coming from. So that sort of started the issue. So he had to be switched off of haylage. He's got sugar intolerance that adds to it. So he can't have anything very sugary. And then moving forward, we had managed, through use of different products, we've managed to really stabilize his gut to the best of our knowledge. And then I suppose last year we had the next major bout, and we had come back from a competition in Germany. He'd run very well in Germany, but his system had a real crash, and he had an allergic reaction to things, and he was really ill. And at that point then, obviously the vets found that it was going on again, and he came back from that, and he ran in the autumn in Ballindennis, and he didn't run to normal power. And after that, he was taken straight to the hospital to find out what was not right. And they found that his small intestine was at him again, and that his glucose absorption had dropped to in the 20% region.
Which means his gut wasn't absorbing the nutrients
nothing.
that it should be. So
Nothing.
His genetic potential is amazing. He's an amazing horse. So I can move my hands around, but he's an amazing horse. So he has the potential, but any engine needs the feed to go in. So he wasn't essentially getting what he needed to drive that genetic potential, was
No, so he ran his muscles. He ended up, he basically burned his muscles off trying to go around the course. And it wasn't the best of ground or weather at the time either. So it was a tough run. And so he's not a lot of thoroughbred in him either. So he finds that type of situation even more difficult.
Okay.
And you know, he'd be very much a top of the ground horse. And I feel that on that time, when we looked at that, we were in real trouble. And the only thing that was changed at that period was we changed from the gut stuff that we were on, the gut product we were on, to Precision Microbes. And in December that year,
a little bit of a last ditch, you did say to me this morning. You
yeah,
were...
well, changing anything with him is a huge issue, because you don't know what way it's going to go. So you change a product with him, and it can have an adverse reaction with him, and then you're in a worse situation. And to be honest, he was so bad, there wasn't really all that much worse we could go. So it was interesting that he put on weight very slowly, but then he decimated his muscles. But then come November time, end November, December, he went back to the vets for a checkup, and his gut was starting to look very good again. On the blood tests, his levels of fibrinogen were down to near normal.
And that's what I was very interested in, because fibrinogen, just to explain to people, is a marker we have in blood for inflammation, essentially.
That's correct, yes. Yeah. And he'd normally run at about 2.1 to 2.2, which is above the norm. And because he'd run like that for essentially 10 years, we had put that down to that was his norm. And, you know, we sort of accepted that that was the baseline to work off of. That when we were on that level, we were okay. But
and this
when
is
we went above it,
his regular blood tests.
These regular blood tests, yes. When we got to the situation where he had this November one, it had come down to around the 2 mark. And then in January, the follow-up one, he was down at normal. He was at 1.4, 1.5. And he has never, in 10 years, he has never been in that area. And at that time also, his gut scanned normal. So whereas all the way along, the inflammation in the gut, the thickening in the walls of the small intestine was felt to be a permanent situation, the vets had advised us that the chances were that would not reduce, that was where there was, and that there would be scarring within the tissue. Anglesey found that had returned to normal, and normal with normal thicknesses. So that was a remarkable change, and and certainly in the period that we've been monitoring this, that's the best it had been. And the only thing that we had changed was we had moved the horse over to Precision Microbes.
So it's a really, look, it's I suppose what fascinated me, and we've chatted a few times, is the depth of clinical knowledge you have yourself and understanding of how things work. And,
Yes.
and we had a great chat out there looking at a paddock about learning itself. None of us are experts, we're always learning. We chatted about water and many things this morning, and you're a bit like myself, curious mind,
Yes.
always trying to find out more. So look, for me, it was the level of detail, particularly the fibrinogen. That was an interesting one, because maybe is that a test? Because gut health is often IBS or inflammatory bowel disease in horses can be hard to diagnose. We don't have true tests, I would say, yet from my experience. So fibrinogen is an interesting one for us because it can mean a lot of different things. But the fact that it leveled down to normal is really impressive.
Well, that I think showed the success of the product that we've used, because nothing else had changed. His feed, he's on the same feed for the last 5, 6, 7 years. His haylage comes from the same field, or sorry, his hay comes from the same field, from the same supplier, and we're very careful about it. Competition-wise, he's on paper, so there's no, and he has his own one paddock that he goes to, and he only does about an hour of that a day. So everything's very monitored with him to help to maintain the stability in his gut and in his system. So when we saw such a dramatic change, that's definitely down to the product, the only product that we changed at the time. However, with regard to his actual diagnosis, Anglesey were able to find a marker in the biochem work that they believe when he's having a gut incident that it increases, and they're monitoring that going forward to see whether that pans out.
Okay.
Because the success of the hindgut and stuff means that, and our monitoring of the hindgut means that we have no real way to know for definite when he's having an issue.
Yeah.
And as such, yes, the fibrinogen level shows us while he's in the issue, but what we're looking for is a precursor where it starts to peak, so that we can then say, okay, we need to intervene now, so that we can have the horse and have him doing the best he can for competition.
Ronan, listen, I've really enjoyed the chat. I know that some other horses on during competition, or you're happy with Precision Microbes. Thank you for having us here this morning.
Yeah.
I love your level of detail. I've learned something this morning.
So
it's fantastic, and it's good to see this guy. He's such an interesting horse. You look at all the different characters. He really has a different character, doesn't he?
Yes, yes, and he's been with us since he was a 4-year-old.
Okay.
I bought him from his breeder, and he's been an absolute fantastic horse. And he's eventing at 4-star level. He's jumped 135, show jumping, and he's won a few dressage championships along the way as well. So he's been a very good horse, and he's got a great old record. He's brilliant cross country. He's a super animal, and he's done that. He's done that while he's had his own little issues going on.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people would have given up on a horse like this, but your level of attention to detail is something to be really applauded. Thank you very much for having me down here this morning.
You're very welcome.
And keep up the great work.
Thank you.